think the extra work we put in is paying off. Our own individual play for every player has been way better than last split.
Our expectation is where we should be right now, maybe even a little bit higher, because I think Fox is really, really good.
Fox burns down one member, the 2v1 for the mid laner, another ace for Schalke, and a triple for Fox.
Playing with PK as ace is not the easiest thing, obviously. It's a long process to learn. I didn't think we would be placed in the bottom of LCS.
Expected! What are you doing? He flashes forward aggressively.
It was harder than last split to have expectations since we had like 2 newer players and we didn't even know ourselves what to expect from them, but I'm still confident.
Are you kidding me? Quarter kill! Oh my god, vitality!
Good evening to everyone here in Berlin and to all of our viewers around the world. Welcome to the European LCS, where week 5 of our summer split continues. As you can see, everyone is pretty hyped to be here. The weekend is just around the corner and the Spanish people have started partying already. Sadly, out of the Euro Cup, but not out of good players here in the European LCS as H2K and Ryu excited as always. There's Vander as well. They'll be looking for a 2-0 today. And there are the Unicorns of Love talking to last minute strategy, as well as Roman, their manager, who actually dyed his hair pink. Well, that is really supportive from him.
Committed.
That's really committed. Good evening, I'm EpicSkillshot supporter, and joining me at the analyst desk to help bring you tonight's games is James Stress O'Leary and Andy Vedius Day. Now, let's take a look at the standings. After yesterday, we had that hype match of the week, and we are well on our way to Krakow, and it's G2 Esports that has regained their spot at the top of the standings after beating Fnatic. H2K still in 3rd, and something really interesting, Roccat is down to the bottom. Giants, another 2-0.
Big surge they've had over the last couple of weeks. At first, we were thinking, oh, Giants, they really don't look so great, but they've picked up a couple of 2-0s. Yes, they've taken a lot of losses at the same time, but 2-0, get those extra 2 points, and they've got themselves in a decent spot right now.
And also Roccat now sitting in 10th place after what looked like a fantastic start for them and a lot of hype going into their new roster. A bit of a surprise to see them fall so dramatically down to the bottom of the table.
Definitely 1-9 in the last 2.5 weeks for Roccat. We're going to have to see if they can turn it around today. Let's take a look at what we saw in terms of meta. Yesterday, we had a good look at Jhin. It was picked a lot, but didn't have a good win rate. Now a 50% win rate after yesterday because the teams looked like they had figured it out a bit more.
Yeah, it does seem that teams are having a much better understanding of how to properly utilize them. And one of the great things about Jhin is if you ever try to run away with him, he is just going to chase you down. Really impressive stuff from what we saw yesterday, and we did have some pretty cool words from Veritas as to how he thinks the champion is just really strong right now.
Yeah, exactly. I was sitting here smiling because I was waiting for the telestrator, and he said, yeah, you know, Jin's OP right now. Range supports, I just 2-shot them. It's great.
Yeah, super easy for him. In the top lane, let's take a look at that. Shen, you called it. You said it's easy to call, but still, you get the prop.
Easiest prediction I think I've ever had.
Chachi showed the way, and then it rummaged all the way through the day, as well as Gnar seeing picked as well.
Yeah, I mean, Shen is a really interesting top laner because not only is he relatively safe, but he has so much global map pressure as well, and it allows you to bring up these interesting carry junglers. We've seen the return of Thunderlord's Graves in the jungle, and that is something that teams are still getting used to, and if used properly, can have a dramatic effect on your playstyle.
Exactly. That's one of the things is he's very forgiving at the same time. It's like, hey, I had to use my ult to get there. Oh, look, I have a TP a couple of seconds later for the next fight. It's all good. So that's why we're seeing a lot of the high priority on Shen.
We'll see if we see a lot more Shen today, as we have a big night of games in store for you this evening, starting with Roccat versus H2K on EULCS 1, while the Unicorns of Love will be jumping onto the Rift against Schalke on EULCS 2. Giants Fnatic could be a very interesting one as well. I know that you're a big Giants fan, Vedius.
Yes, it's always good to see Giants bring out interesting picks. They had the Casio yesterday on night, one of his well-known picks over in the Korean Challenger, and it'll be interesting to see how well they do up against what looked to be like a bit of a slumping Fnatic yesterday.
I'll be casting Vitality at up against Splice. So that'll be an interesting one for the jungle matchup there as well. We talked a lot about the return of Shook, so lots to keep your eyes on today.
Definitely. And as a quick reminder, the EU LCS is shaking things up next week and will be hitting your browsers on Friday, 5 p.m. Central European Time, and on Saturday at noon here in Berlin. Head over to lolesports.com for the local start times in your area. And remember, at the end of the show today, we'll also enter the post-game lobby. Our special guest today is OG's Amazing, and we want to hear from you. Jump on Twitter and let us know who is your MVP of the split so far and why. You can send your responses at LOL Esports and let us know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm not going to be on the post-game lobby, so I'll just put it out there. The early, easy one trick for me so far, maintaining his spring split form. Hey, look, he's doing a lot of what G2 need him to in the early game, allows him to go through the game and take a lot of convincing wins.
For me, honestly, Trashy has had such a massive impact on Splice in particular. His impact and how he's resulted in the change in the team's dynamic, I think, has really been a big contributor for their success so far in the LCS.
Not Knight.
Not Knight. He's going to be my rookie of the split.
All right. Well, let's take a closer look at our first matches. I'm going to start off with Roccat versus H2K. We mentioned it already. Roccat all the way at the bottom of the standings, continuing down that downward slope. 0-2 yesterday versus Giants, a match that they should be able to pull out a draw at least, setting them up for 1-9.
It's a really rough spot for Roccat to be in. I mean, when you look at what they're playing, they've got the Hecarim coming out of the jungle. They're playing some weird stuff in the top lane as well. Lissandra, Jace, and now that's not to say these picks are particularly bad. Each of them have their place in certain matchups, but right now in the metagame, unless you're working as a unit to get these picks in, it's very difficult to have them work. And the same with like the Hecarim. If you've got the Shen coming in with him, great, but if the execution isn't there, then Roccat are going to struggle.
To me, it did feel like that Parang was just trying to get on something that he was comfortable on, and unfortunately it just didn't work at all. I mean, we're still seeing the problems from Roccat that we've been seeing throughout them the whole split, and we have to remember the first time these two met, this actually went 1-1 in what a lot of people thought would be a stomp for H2K, especially with the return of Freeze, and Roccat just, there was so much hype behind them, and we identified their issues, they identified their issues, and now we're at the halfway point, and those issues still seem to be there.
Yeah, they need to be turned around, and we were going to see what they can do. As said, they were already 1-1 versus H2K last time around, and H2K yesterday 1-1 versus OG. And one of those two games was very good for H2K, and the other of the two seemed like they were not proactive enough. And as a testament to that, H2K as a team is last in the CS taken between 15 and 30 minutes. They just don't seem to do anything at some point.
No, I had a look back at their games versus OG, and in both games they actually had a pretty good start. Things were looking very optimistic for them, but then just nothing happened for 30 minutes. Both games were decided by a Baron, and from a top team, that's not what we would expect.
Yeah.
Exactly. And when you look at how H2K have been playing, one person has been perhaps uncharacteristically quiet, and that's out of the mid lane, Ryu. Now, that's not to say he's not having good performances, but Spring Split, we were seeing the Ahri come out, the Lissandra come out, these picks that were setting up team fights and setting up H2K to snowball games through. They haven't been able to rely on him for whatever reason in this split, and I just want to see maybe H2K look to get Ryu in the game more.
Are we being too hard on them? I know that the players yesterday also took to Twitter and just said, we haven't been on form lately whatsoever, and with a coach like Prowley, you'd think that they'd be able to get back on that horse, but...
Well, I feel like the criticism is deserved because, I mean, this is a team that we were comparing to Fnatic and G2. We were thinking that these were our top three in Europe, and if they want to portray themselves as that top-tier team, then they need to be ready to demonstrate, and so far they're just not living up to the hype.
They might do it in this one. They are still in third place as we speak, but meanwhile, over on EULCS 2, the Unicorns of Love are standing by to take on Schalke and Fear. Both teams, they had a draw yesterday because we have a lot of those here in Europe. One thing that really was good or surprisingly good to me from the side of the Unicorns of Love. We said, oh, they're such a solo queue team lately, but in that first game in the series, they seemed like a very coordinated team. Chachi on Shen was a gift for them as well.
That was not the Unicorns of Love that I was expecting to turn up yesterday, because game one, they had such a very well-coordinated draft. It seemed so well-rounded with the Shen, with the Bard. We saw Exile on a control mage with a Nivea, and they just executed it flawlessly. The global pressure that Chachi was able to put out on that Shen was fantastic, and it was just so great to see a well-rounded and good-performing Unicorns of Love.
And that was what put a smile on my face as well, is the fact that it wasn't Unicorns of Love going, well, we'll play the Shen and bring him in. It was setting up plays with that as well. And then you translate that to, actually, Veritas having a good game, which might sound a little harsh, but I feel like Veritas has been a very quiet import here in the last, in the first 4 weeks of Split. I haven't really seen him as a standout player, but yesterday we actually look at Veritas playing Jhin, and his comments after made a bit of a name for himself. So I don't know whether the Jhin and the Shen are really going to get through for them in today's series.
It does seem that they rely on those picks. Also, the Bard for Hylissang is something that they absolutely rely on.
The only thing that concerns me is in their game 2, when they had these picks taken away from them, they reverted back to their 1-3-1, and they still had the same mistakes that they had before of Exile, being caught out of position, maybe not as proactive as they'd like to be in the early game. So hopefully they can maintain their performance from game 1 into these longer series that we have.
Yeah, because as said, a draw yesterday for the Unicorns of Love and one for Schalke as well. So both of them will want to have a 2-0. For Schalke, it was versus Vitality. They punished it over aggression in game 1. It was very, very close. It came down to a Baron once again. And in game 2, one thing we wanted to take another look at is that Steve fantastic Gnar ult.
This was so fun to cast. It was such a joy, simply because neither me or Pyro were expecting this to come out. And then Steve gets the flank, and it was just all lined up so beautifully. The Graves collateral damage, the AoEs from Sivir, and the Swain. It was just such great execution.
Exactly, and we were both talking about the exhaust that comes out onto
The
Kennen
exhaust,
as well,
yes.
just shuts him down in a couple of fights. I do question now how the pick and ban is going to go in this series, because Schalke, Gilius was talking about it in the interview, they actually don't prioritize Shen particularly high themselves, so if they take that out, what do the Unicorns have left? As you said yesterday, they didn't look convincing without it.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. The teams are almost ready for those picks and bans, so let's hand it over to our casters.